World is enormous horsepower in being able to develop vaccines, both using reproducing existing technologies and new vaccines. So among the ecosystem includes the Serum Institute of India, which is based in Pune. Biologically, who we work with is in Hyderabad, is Bharat, site is Cadilla, but there's a number of newer organizations as well. So it's a very robust, I use the term ecosystem of vaccine producers that I think in many respects we underused during the pandemic. So what we've done is develop vaccines.
Different state when you're 40 years old, when you're 80 years old, when you're healthy, when you're diseased. And the reason for that is because the two specific elements which builds a tissue, the cells and something called extracellular matrix, where it's basically the scaffold where the cells live, both of them change with time and different kind of conditions. So what we do in the company, as a tissue engineering company, is changing the state of a tissue and changing it back from a disease state to healthy state. So we have multiple product pipeline in terms of corneal regeneration, liver regeneration, and lung regeneration, but just wanted to spend the next couple of minutes on cornea. So what we do in this particular case is we have a treatment called bioengineered liquid cornea, which has a certain kind of cell modulators called exosome secreted from stem cells. In these cells in the nucleus, it packs the same genome. Eventually, like, all these cells came from one cell. What makes them so different, however, is the control, which is known as epigenomics, that basically what part of this genome is read, and this is spatiotemporally controlled, so at different part of your body at different time.
Yeah.
Sir, good evening, everybody. I'm Sapna. I represent BioNeeds, which is in the fastest growing contract research organization in India today. As a preclinical CRO, we specialize in providing preclinical services or discovery services up to IND enabling, and we've been globally recognized as one of the best CROs and fastest growing. Thank you.
Hi and good evening and thank you for coming. I'm Anurag Bagaria, Chairman and CEO of Chemwell. Chemwell provides contract development and manufacturing services for biologics, both proteins, antibodies and cell therapies.
Thank you. Alex Del Priori. Within Syngene, we have kind of three divisions. One around the research and discovery, one around development, and then another around commercial manufacturing services, and I'll lead the latter. So happy to be with you, and look forward to the questions and hopefully some of our opinions. I'm not sure if we have answers, we have opinions.
Yes.
Good evening, this is Dr. Shubhro Chakravarti. So I'm representing BioInnovation. I think you all know what BioInnovation is, but just to mention you that, as Sonia also mentioned, BioInnovation is not only providing the startup funding, it's kind of an enabler, creating the ecosystem, and also ecosystem for the for having our CRO or the CDMO much more improved. So we do support some of the already supporting through some of the programs like National Biopharma Mission. I think is one of them. I think Syngene also we are supporting to increase their analytical services as well with this, so that they can provide more service, not only to the I mean, of course the contract basis, but of course differentiating with respect to the startup or the academic researchers coming out or spinning out to a company compared to the regular commercial contract manufacturing. So Just for getting questions from you.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for the introduction. So at least everybody gets a context.
In India has been very encouraging, bringing out so many policies and so many avenues, and the kind of small biotechs that are coming, virtual companies that are coming. There are huge opportunities for not only from Indian companies, from also across the globe for CROs like us, and the same thing would translate to the CDMOs as well. So I think we are in a very, very optimistic and a very high impetus right now, and it will be a great outcome.
Anything anybody else wants to add to just? So let me change the question now. That was outside looking in. All of you being based in India and providing services, are there any considerations, two parts, more on the global themes? There is a posturing of onshoring in the US. It's not that easy to restructure networks, but there is political consideration, the geopolitical situation, and then there's China. Can you talk both, is a consideration about any onshoring in the US or Western Europe a consideration, and how is India done versus China, especially the pandemic situation? When you talk about both of those factors, maybe we'll start, since you have the mic, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think maybe the theme here is what are some of the challenges that we're facing, right? We talk about the good stuff, but what's some of the challenges? I do agree with you on kind of the quality and the IP. It consistently comes up as a traditional challenge that we typically have really in any developing country, but India specific, since this is the panel we're talking about. Having worked on, in Europe and the US, I tend to agree. By and large, though the perception may be there, and someone asked the question, all you have to do is say, come and see. Come and see, and you'll find out that the quality systems are top notch. In fact, we probably go overboard because we've been told so long that we aren't as good. And I just frankly, that's just not true. IP, if we don't protect IP, we're just not going to be in business. And so I think everyone understands that. But some of the challenges which still exist that maybe we have creative ways of trying to overcome is you have a time difference. 9.5 hours, 10.5 hours in the US and India means early mornings, late nights. Are we really asking our customer to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to have a call with us? Are we asking them to stay up at 10 o'clock at night to have a call with us? Or are we doing the opposite in India? Can't change that. So we have to figure out how do we manage that. When we look at the geopolitical pieces that are coming in place, there was a lot of rhetoric, certainly more talking than actions 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Oh, we're going to onshore. What are we going to do? We need to diversify. What's our business continuity plan? You hear these terminologies, but I actually start seeing some real actions now because they're getting a little more serious. We had a client come to us and said, look, we need a completely independent China strategy. What can you do? Don't start with here and don't go back to N-1, 2, 3, 4. You need to be all the way consistent and independent of the China region because the risk is too great. Will we be able to do that in India? There's no reason we shouldn't be able to. The question becomes how long, and what will we have to do? So I think that's an example of the pendulum is starting to swing more towards action. Don't know where it will end up.
Anything you want to add?
So on the geopolitical thing, I mean, this onshoring in the US or in other countries, I think that's like Alex said, more rhetoric. But China, I think it's a competitor to India, and but they've got scale that we don't. They have things that, and it's both in biotech and in small molecules that they have so much going for them right now that I think people are trying to figure out what is the non-China strategy, but I think it's going to take some time. The good thing going for India is what has happened with COVID and what China did during COVID. We have to see how to capitalize on it now.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, I think both can gain, with the pipelines so rich and so much investment going in. So maybe the last thing, just being.
There's one point
Yeah,
I would
please,
like to add
please.
when comes to China.
Yes, please.
In our experience, actually, on the preclinical studies that we perform, essentially for a regulatory submission, you need, for example, the GLP studies. The GLP in China is not a OECD member country. So what happens is, in fact, the Chinese companies come to us for doing the preclinical studies. Okay, so that's a very good opportunity for India and CROs like us. So, I mean, that's a point.
Thank you. That's a great point. Okay, so panel, you start with their, and what is the role they need to play and to capitalize on all of this? What are they doing and what more would we want them to do?
Okay, just from the previous discussion that we had, coming onto this little bit, in some cases actually, when we are trying to do the manufacturing or testing or anything, we are a lot dependent on other countries with respect to the raw materials or the other resources. And in fact, during the COVID time, we had a tough time getting the plastic waste for either manufacturing or for the testing. And this is mainly the country, those who are producing it, first priority to supply to them. So the government first was, what the priority for the government is to do a Make in India policy. And we do have that in our portfolio to ensure that the raw materials, I mean, we're placing calls and then asking different manufacturers to initiate manufacturing with the critical raw materials, so that we do not have biological E. We talked about their formulation main material was a question mark because they are not able to get enough supply. Government has to intervene and then secure that material. It cannot go like that. So we need to be self-reliant, and when we want to be self-reliant, we need to produce almost everything by ourselves. So that's the opportunity, and that's a big opportunity for us because we can do this. We do have market to sell those products, sell those things, and government has full support on that one. And we are actually making calls.
No text found in that location. 1918 Android system notification.
I think the support from the government is completely there for any angle with respect to the training to the staff's preparation of the skill sets that is required for this one. We just, anything that we are doing, we are discussing with the stakeholders, understanding the issues or the problems or the need that we have, and accordingly the policies being modified or changed or new policies are coming in. So I think it's a full support, no question in that one. So we're just looking into what are the things that industry needs or the actual stakeholders need.
What about from the industry, or if you have companies, what do you look at the government?
Yeah, I'll take it just a short moment, an example. So obviously we have a very active chairwoman in Karen Shaw, and she spends a lot of time with us and says, why aren't you talking more to the government? I talk to the government every day, type of comments. And once you start those relationships, they are here to help, right? So grants to do things that build capability, but even for items associated with COVID, we were able to work, through government connections to get access to licenses for making several of the drugs. We're doing Paxlovid now. We're doing, you look at remdesivir. So all these things came through a government conversation first that helped us get access to provide stuff to India as well as other parts of the world.
Something, all right.
No, I think things are improving a lot in India, and I've been amazed to see how things like what Stemputics has done or 2-3 other startups are doing. yes, you have to work with DCGI or DPT to explain and ask for help on how do you navigate the the regulatory system. But it's amazing to see how forthcoming they are, how helpful they've been, and the only thing I'd ask for is more timely help and advice for the industry. Because as a startup or as a manufacturer, loss of time is the biggest loss we can have, and other than that, I think we're going in the right way.
Yeah, I'd like to add one point on that. For the contract research industry, like what we are doing, we depend on receiving the test items from outside into India to perform studies and all. So, because of COVID, there is a lot of custom clearance issues. They take a lot of question. Of course, it has to be when you are getting things into. But that kind of, if it has been streamlined a bit, it would be making things faster. Actually, the turnaround times can be faster. Though there are certain areas, the improvement has been done in terms of issuing licenses, because initially it would take about 2.5 to 3 months. Now we are getting it within 1 month. So that has accelerated, and there's a little more open-mindedness to receive feedback on this. But that's one challenge that we are facing. I'm not sure how that can be eased out, but yeah.
Okay, I think we're on time, so really thank you everyone for those wonderful comments. I think maybe before we just have some closing comments, is there anything anybody from the audience wants to add or ask our panelists? Sure.
Materials from India. So these two important things are a very big development on the legal side, and I think that would
It's not an Indian disease. If I talk to outsiders, they say you are from India. So how do I break the cycle and how do I move forward?
Ask
Everyone, I need everyone's input.
I was very excited about the hair.
Some of these products you can see we have launched Omics, VNIR. VNIR is present in our pavilion right now. Shankar Narayana Life Sciences, Atrimed, Indra System, Biofan, Biomedical, they have all come up with the innovative COVID-19 mitigating products. Strategies for reaching 50 billion in the next 5 years, around 50 lakhs. 489 startups have been covered, so have been given the grant so far, and involving around 116 crores till date. Biotech startups funded around 173, funds sanctioned around 46.09 crores. We also have a grand challenge program where we float the